Hi, I'm Norman Liss, and the name of the program is The Way to Go. I invite you to join me each week at this time as we explore places to go and things to do. A few weeks ago in the New York Times book review, I saw an item about a book called Phantoms of the Hudson Valley, and it looked fascinating, and I thought it might be a book of photographs, which it is, but it's more than that. It's an incredibly fascinating book about mansions and what goes into them. It was written by Monica Randall, who is my guest today, and we're going to explore together some of the mansions and how she did the book. Monica, it's such a pleasure to have you come here, since I got to know you pretty well through the book. But the title is very interesting to me. Phantoms of the Hudson Valley. I expected a book on mansions, but it's more than that. What does phantoms mean in the book?
Well, I think it's the perfect word to use. In fact, I picked the title before I even started doing the book. Being an outsider, being from Long Island originally, and then to come up here, as a first timer, it was kind of incredible. And the places that I saw just by, getting in the car and driving up along Route 9, basically, Route 9, and then seeing these phantom-like castles and fortresses, and, some of them being empty. That's the word that came to mind.
But you found that maybe those that you thought were abandoned were not empty, not all of them.
I was wrong a lot of the time. Again, my only frame of reference was places on Long Island and Oyster Bay, where I live. You don't find that many places that are abandoned. But up here, the shutters would be off the hinges, vines would have infiltrated the walls and gone through the chimneys and the rooms, and then you realize somebody's living there, but there's no evidence.
Sometimes you approached a house, climbed a fence, and got to the door, and there was someone there. But phantoms, to me, not only means great homes who may or may not still be there, but it also means ghosts and spirits. And it runs through all of this that you discovered some real ghosts.
That came through just having spontaneous conversations with the people who own these houses, who were gracious enough to allow basically a trespasser into their world. And I noticed very early on that people were volunteering these stories about their belief that they were sharing these houses.
It wasn't also only the outside of these houses. The insides were incredible, even those that seemed abandoned, covered with dust.
Unbelievable.
And
it really kind of blew my mind. I mean, it was quite a treat.
You said that over time you discovered this. How long did it take you to get this book together and write it?
17 years. And that's my fault because I didn't want it to end. I mean, this was a magical mystery tour for me. It was something that was so much fun. It was so intriguing that I really didn't want it to end.
You went back to some of these several times.
Many times.
We talked about ghosts. I'd like to show in the book some photos, but let's start with this very interesting one here, which is a ghost, correct? Now,
yes.
That's a picture of a ghost. So how did the ghost pose for you?
Well, I'm not going to give too much away. You'll have to go to a bookstore or to your local library, which is also acceptable. But I was hearing stories, and I had read a lot of Carl Karmer's books. He's one of your fine authors up here, as you know.
Octagon House?
The Octagon House, which he lived in, and he wrote a lot of wonderful books, which provided inspiration for me. And he talked about wandering down Clinton Road one day and seeing this ghost, and he described it very, very visually. The ghost of Esther Wood, who committed suicide, I believe, in 1901 at the house named after her called Esther Wood. And so I went there on the eve of her death on several occasions with the permission of the master school, and had a lot of trouble getting her on film. It's difficult to do that, it's a 1 in a million shot. So you're going to have to read the book to find out how she finally appeared. So I'm not going to answer your question completely.
I think you just did.
Well, you have to get up to page 201.
You mentioned Estorwood and you mentioned the Master School. Now, some of these mansions with their wonderful, wonderful design, Gothic, many of them, and some of them are gone. Some of them are abandoned, and some of them are converted to other use, like Estorwood, which was bought by the Master School in Dobbs Ferry, is it? Yeah, and is now in great use. Of course, the students you write say that they see the ghosts all the time.
Well, up until a few years ago, at least up until 10 years ago, yes, I just spontaneously approached a couple of the students, and they had either heard stories about it or a roommate or a former student. But the thing that really convinced me that there's some substance to it was, oddly enough, just before what was it called, Irving Cliff was bulldozed, I think in 1983, and I had gotten permission from the owners who live in Oyster Bay to take photographs, last-minute photographs of the house. And while I was up in the attic foraging about, I came across a letter that was dated, I think it was 1917, a student describing some unusual activities. There were journals, there were little scribbles, but that material, the tangible evidence of things that may or may not have gone on in the building, were found in another building at Irving Cliff, which is no longer there.
You cover 26 estates. They have to be multi-roomed and on large property. Is that the basis for your doing it?
I'm not sure what the criteria was, because I did about 60. I wanted to cover 60 estates, and then, publishers have these limitations.
So you got another book.
Easily, maybe 2 or 3. Absolutely. One story was more compelling than the next. But we sort of narrowed it down to 26.
Yeah, you said that one story was more compelling than the next. The text, the descriptions, the interviews you did with people, your approaches, is absolutely great. Absolutely great. I was intrigued from the first time I looked into the book and glanced through it and then read what I got. This is a book that is worth reading cover to cover without glancing, because every part of it is so terrific. 17 years is a long time to work on a project of this size, but how did you decide which homes to visit? I know they were pared down, but how did you decide? How did you live in Oyster Bay? You've always lived in Long Island.
Yes.
And yet you decided to do this on Westchester, which you mentioned earlier is not a place that's that familiar to you.
No, it's not. I really don't know what moved me to come up here. A friend who knew I was constantly searching for ruins. I especially find ruins kind of fascinating. I think we all do. I think we love to go into a building that's empty and has been empty for many, many years, and sort of let our imaginations run amok or fantasize. You look at a ruin and you wonder, what went on here? Who lived here? Why is it empty? You start to create these scenarios in your mind. It's very rich, with this kind of creative thought. And there was nothing left for me to do on Long Island. I'd spent my whole life, starting at about age 12, documenting what we had down there, the Gatsby era, as everyone knows about. But I had this hunger to find new inspiration. I think all artists need to be moved and to be inspired. And I had no idea that just an hour away, right on the Hudson, was this incredible lost world. It was a lost world.
Let's get specific. These were built by very wealthy people, and they very, very wealthy people, and there are some that are so interesting and so unique. Why don't we talk about some of them? Let's talk about, for example, Bannerman's Castle. Where is it and what is it?
I assume that everybody probably knows the story. I mean, if anyone lives up in Westchester, they probably know about Bannerman's Castle. If you just head north along the river, you see this fathom of a castle. I think it had 200 rooms, and it just rises up. The morning that I spotted it, I was with a friend of mine, and I screamed at him. I said, "Stop the car," And we looked out, and there was this little island, not very big. It was only about 7 acres, I guess.
Off where is that?
I know the 9s. I always say Route 9, but 9 changes the names.
Is it about 9?
Just along the road. It's around Fishkill.
Fishkill
or Beacon. It's not in a town proper. It's just kind of around there someplace.
What's unique about it?
Oh my God, what isn't unique about it? It boggles your mind. You think you're hallucinating. It's enormous. It's frightening. It looks like the setting for a ghost convention.
Is it completely demolished? Or?
No. The reason it looks so derelict, it's been gutted. It was gutted, I believe, in the 60s. It was also hit badly by, various things exploding even back as early as in the 20s. When Francis Bannerman first built it, around the turn of the century, he built it initially as an arsenal. And I think to this day you can still see on the walls Bannerman's arsenal. And he was a collector of war, weaponry. He had thousands of cannons and tens of thousands of cannonballs. And after he passed away, which I think was in 1938, I'm not sure, kids fascinated by it would go out by rowboat. Many of them drowned. And they would collect the cannonballs, or they'd start fires and they would explode. So over the years there have been a number of major explosions, and so that gutted the building, and it also killed a few people.
Why is it so fascinating today? Is anything standing at all?
Oh yes, the whole building.
Oh.
It doesn't look as though it's been gutted. When you see it, I think on the back cover there's an exterior shot which I took from the Amtrak railroad, and there's not much of a ledge. It's very easy to get squashed by the train if the train is coming, which you can usually hear it. And so I was standing there, and that was as close as I could get. It's another 500 feet or so before you would actually get to the... But look at that. I mean, anyone with a questing, adventurous spirit, spotting that. I mean, visually, you're lured to it. It's almost got a magnetic pull.
You said visually. You're a visual person. Painter, photographer, set designer, filmmaker. This all fits in, doesn't it?
It was miraculous.
Let's talk about some of the others. Elephant House.
Elephant House is... Are you okay? The Elephant House, I'm sad to say, I never had a chance to actually see it. And of course it wasn't called the Elephant House. That was just a name that popped
Real
in
elephants?
my mind. Oh, yes. Dr. Pierre Bernard, and I really hope that the public becomes aware of this extraordinary person who built his mansion, an English Tudor mansion in Nyack overlooking the Hudson River. It's one of the few houses that I covered that's on the west side of the river, because the bulk of these palazzos are on the east side of the river. And I had to search far and wide to find some interesting places on the west side of the river, not to leave, them out. He was so amazing. He built this house. He had, I believe it was 3 pet elephants. And it sounds kind of kooky. It sounds like he was an eccentric person until you read about him.
You have a photo in here of elephants, actually. Why don't I find it in the book and you keep talking about it?
Well, those aren't my photographs. I had to borrow them from the Historical Society or the Historical Wing at the Nyack Public Library. And I went in, I just wandered in one day and started reading about this amazing man who was so far ahead of his time. You know, he had cures for all kinds of illnesses. He had doctorate degrees from a variety of universities. He taught Sanskrit at different colleges. He spoke 7 languages, I believe. So the man was not only a scholar, but he was extraordinary. And I thought, well, why would a man who's so well educated keep 5 elephants in his house? Now, he also had a separate building called the Elephant House that had walls that were 4 feet thick. And I think the structure might still, if I'm not mistaken, that structure might be the only thing that survived. And yes, these are his elephants. Now, those 3 down at the bottom were circus elephants. They had performed at Lunar Park and Coney Island. And here we have an interesting picture of one of his elephants being put to the test. She's taking the leap of faith. She's lying on the ground while this 2,000 or 5,000 pound elephant puts his front foot on her stomach. And is she going to live? Is she going to die? Is she going to be squashed? I don't really know. We don't have any. Those are before pictures. I'm sure she's.
But it's gone now.
It's gone. Everything is gone. And the story is amazing.
Hard to believe that.
Unbelievable story.
There are some that are fairly close. We talked about Estwood. We talked about Bannerman's. Certainly Beechwood. And
the best.
And Wildenstein is now open to the public.
Yes, it's a museum.
Where is it?
It's up in Rhinebeck. And I believe it's off Old Morton Road, and of course the story, about Daisy Suckley.
Of course, we can say read the book and find out more details about it.
There's actually 2 books out now. There's another one called Closest Companions. I knew her for about 12 years.
Really?
She passed away 2 months shy of her 100th birthday.
She had had some letters.
After she passed away, they found an old beat-up trunk under her 4-postered bed with letters. I believe it was 50 letters written to her by FDR and a series of letters written to him. And they had quite a remarkable relationship, a spiritual relationship. And the letters, I understand, were just auctioned off recently for an extraordinary amount of money.
I want to continue, but I do first want to remind our viewers that we're talking about a wonderful book. It's called Phantoms of the Hudson Valley by Monica Randall. Monica Randall is my guest today. Pick another mansion.
Oh, dear.
Take a mansion. Pick a mansion.
Oh, my. Well, I personally, I kind of love Beechwood, even though it's been altered drastically. It was gutted. It's turned into condominiums. And you were right, what you said initially. There was something about the entrance gate that I saw off Route 9 back, I think, in 1979. And the entrance gate, with the rusty gate and the vines intertwining, I really thought that place was abandoned. I didn't know that there were other ways to get there. I had no idea that Alfred Mills, who had been this wonderful, delightful caretaker for many, many years, I think he lived there for 40, perhaps 50 years. And so I crawled over the wall. A tree had fallen and allowed, it was kind of easy to get through where the broken wall was. And I was wandering up to the house, didn't see any sign of life, and it was starting to get dark, and then I noticed there was this little light in the window, and as I was about to knock on the door of the servants' wing, the door opened, and there was Alfred Mills, who was this delightful human being. We became the best of friends. He told me about the 5 murdered virgins who had been killed there way back in the last century by some priest who went bananas, and that the 5 girls were buried in the basement of the house, and there was some ghastly murder trial that went on for months right here in White Plains. There's some records of the whole murder trial, but that just before he was either found guilty or not, this gentleman, this murderer, vanished, and nobody knew what happened to him. So Alfred mentioned how many, many years later they found a skeleton walled up in an old Dutch oven in the lower kitchen of the house. And of course, again, I don't want to go through the whole story, but there is an account of that whole thing. But
you talk in your book about going inside. You mentioned after Miss Stuckley died, that things were found. You rummaged through some attics and found some things, including some clothing, which you have.
Actually, I wasn't really doing the rummaging. That wouldn't be proper. Alfred Mills at Beechwood was rummaging just before he had to leave the house, and he thought that everything had been thrown out in the dumpster, because that had been going on for months before I'd even found the place. And he found 3 trunks, steamer trunks, and he called me up on Long Island and said, "You have to get up here right away," and I dropped everything. And sure enough, there were 3 incredible trunks. 2 of the trunks were filled with fabulous clothes, about 50 old gowns with Paris labels that had belonged to Narcissa Vanderbilt. And he gave them to me, actually I should say my museum down on Long Island. And one of the trunks was filled with old embroidered linens with the little monograms and little sayings and the most incredible lace. And I have all of that beautifully preserved, and they are among my most treasured possessions. And it was that discovery that prompted my trying to recreate these ghostly phantoms.
17 years. Why so long?
I didn't want it to end. That's all. It was just too much fun. It was very sad to finally turn an amount of material that stood about a foot high, between the photographs and the text, and then it was up to the publishers to decide what was actually going to be weeded out.
Which would you suggest to viewers that they might be able to visit?
Oh, goodness. You can visit most of them today, again, by following the Hudson River. I hesitate to say Route 9. I know for the New York Post, I said, just go up Route 9. I didn't know that you have 9W and 9D and 9C and 9X, and I don't know where one ends and the other, because you just follow the road that's closest to the river, because that's all I did. I get lost, and I'm phobic about driving, so I don't know what I'm doing half the time. And you will see most of them. Like, you will see the Untermeyer House in Yonkers. You will then see Lyndhurst, which is open to the public. Then you see the Octagon House and Irving Cliff. And, of course, the old Warner Castle is gone. Nothing.
Where was that?
That was in Irvington. That was a great place. From there, you'll see the Shepherd House, Beechwood, and you just take it from there. And I put them in order so that if you take the first one in Yonkers and just kind of follow as you read, the chapters go up until the Rhinebeck area, which has 36 mansions to treat yourself to right in Rhinebeck.
And even those that are gone, or the sites at least, are interesting, and also those which are skeletons, gutted or part standing. Wasn't there one when they're tearing it down and the workman who was doing it saw a ghost and he said, "I'm not going back there anymore"?
Oh, that was Warner Castle. Well, that's one of the stories. One of the locals told me that story, because you had this lone tower, this incredible Gothic feudal style tower with a turret. It rose up maybe 60 feet. And yet the rest of the building, which was 72 rooms in all, the rest of the building was gone. And yet the tower, usually when a contractor takes on the job of demolishing a building, you don't just leave one part of the structure. You're supposed to complete the job. So I asked, and someone said, well, the man who was operating the bulldozer thinks he saw a woman up in the window, and he turned the bulldozer around, headed down the mountain, or the glade or whatever it was, and never finished the job. You hear some wacky stories, and I love interviewing people about these things, because that's where you get the stories. I don't know if anything's been exaggerated or, if things have been altered, but I wrote it just the way it was told to me. And
these phantoms, these ghosts, these spirits, do you believe they're there?
Oh, absolutely. There is no question in my mind. I've stopped trying to convince people. There's enough, physical evidence. You just follow the basic laws of physics. Everything is vibrating. Everything is moving. Everything is on some kind of a wave frequency. When we die, we don't really die. The remarkable experience for me, when I put those gowns on, if I put them on and I could get really centered and focused, I could feel the energy. I could feel a kind of persona, like a residue, an echo of the personality.
What you're discussing comes out in the book. There's that wonderful ethereal quality about your writing and makes it terrific. It's been great. I do want to remind our audience that we're talking about this great book. I think it's really terrific. The Phantoms of the Hudson Valley, and bookstores, libraries. It's a great book. People should go and read it. The book I'm talking about, of course, is Phantoms of the Hudson Valley by my guest, Monica Randall. It's a terrific book. I'm Norman Liss. The name of this program is The Way to Go. And until next time, enjoy yourself.